Just to tell you a bit of my brief history for the people that don't know me, after my 12 years in the Army, I needed to start somewhere, but then IT in the Army, I joined an agency, worked for 10 years in an agency that was doing CMS implementations. That's the part where I started to get to know Janus. I think it was in 2009 probably. Then from the CMS expert group, I got to know the CEO for Kentico. So actually the CMS expert group helped me into Kentico in 2015, joined there. At Kentico, there was also an internal startup, which I helped, let's say, grow together with the team until it was Conscia.ai and carved out, became CEO for Conscia.ai, left there in, what was it, the beginning of 2023, January. And in May, I joined Conscia. I also knew Sana Remicki, CEO for Conscia, also from the CMS expert group in Florida. So I would almost say, Janus, you connected everything together. You're responsible for almost all of my career. And so I'm happy to be here, but I'm not going to talk about my whole career. We promised to just talk about the last 6 months, if that's okay with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I wanted to use this half an hour not to do a whole slideshow about what Conscia is. I think you can go to the website, Conscia.ai. We'll have the logo there. But I thought, let's give you a bit of a perspective of what I saw and what I've learned after my 10 years in an agency doing CMS implementations, then going to Kentico, Kontent.ai, and then ending up at a digital experience orchestration platform, because that's what Conscia is. New category in the market. Some call it DXO, some call it DXC. There's a lot of terms and definitions for it. I think the market is still trying to invent itself. We call it digital experience orchestration platform, but you could say the products that you find in that category typically are Uniform from Denmark, are Octo from Sweden, and then you have a lot of other different products that are in that area. So for me, it was also a pretty nice learning experience in the last 6 months, and I just wanted to touch base on a couple of them, and for that I prepared some slides. I will then not see you anymore. I'll keep on my camera, but Janus, you will interrupt me when there's somebody with a hand or a question. But I just have a couple of discussion topics to go through. So let's see if I'm able to share the screen first. Janus, yes. Does it work? Yes?
It works, thank you.
Cool. So the first thing I wanted to say is, and I think everybody recognizes it, one of the things that I realized in the last 6 months, that the future is composable. And I took this nice flower field, and that's actually not credits to me coming up with this great analogy, but it was actually the CEO from a company called Cito, also from Sweden. I visited a MAC Alliance event in Stockholm, I think it was now 2 weeks ago. And he used this analogy of this flower field of, let's say, flowers. And I think that where he actually explained, well, if you would let people go into a flower field and they would pick their own, let's say, nice bouquet of flowers, everybody will pick different flowers, and then together it will make a bouquet that actually will fit their needs. And I really love that analogy, because I think that is actually what is happening now these days. I see a lot of companies that obviously start building their bouquet of flowers with all these nice and beautiful elements and trying to make it a nice bouquet. And when I joined only 6 months ago, I had the feeling that there was still a bit of a fight in the market whether everybody would go composable or not, whether it was still this all-in-one, yes or no. And I think that, and I will get to it a little bit further in a couple of other discussion topics, but that this future is going composable, I'm pretty convinced of this in the last couple of months, because I actually see a lot of clients moving in that direction. And what for me was very interesting to see, and I think you probably also noticed that in the market, is that also the companies that we consider as really like typical monoliths, and without saying anything negative about them, but if you, for example, take like SAP or Salesforce as like two, let's say, very big companies that, let's say, offer one big suite, also those companies you actually see and move into a composable world. You probably saw that there was a presentation that Salesforce actually created some integrator with Optimizely in this case, together with Content Stack or Contentful. I'm not sure which one it was, But for me, that was a sign in the market that composable is actually the future. It's sometimes a bit of a definition question what it actually is. And sometimes people think that going composable only means that you will only go into Mac or Mac Alliance only vendors. But I also believe that it's a composition of elements that everybody connects together. And I really believe that that's something that you see in the market. And I think it gets more and more attraction these days. Janus, I'm not sure if you want me just to talk or if you just want to step in and ask a question and then we move on.
Just keep going. You know, the ice gets thinner and thinner, but it's always fun to watch.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, so this is the first part. And I think that one of the responsibilities we probably all have in the market is that we should not make it a game between who is, let's say, old and new, but that we really try to find a way to make sure that at least all these solutions connect together. And that brings me also immediately to the next point, because this is also an interesting discussion that I see. And when I joined Conscia, Conscia was not part of the Mac Alliance yet. Sana Remicki was one of the ambassadors. I also remember from my Content.ai times when we were part of, or at least when we're still part of Kentico, we could not join the Mac Alliance, and then when we separated, we joined the Mac Alliance. But I also see that obviously you have the Mac movement, and for the people that don't know it, it's like an alliance that advocates products that have, let's say, microservice architecture, API first, cloud native, and headless solutions. But what obviously the Mac Alliance really does is advocate architectures that are purely Mac. So you could almost say you go Mac or not, and Mac is the best route to go. But what I also saw and of course we're part of the Mac Alliance for Conscia. It's really important. You probably also saw that they have some kind of admission book, so it's a kind of a stamp of approval for the vendors that are part of the Mac Alliance, that they follow certain standards and certain security standards and things like that. But for me, it's not about pushing clients into a Mac-only architecture or not. I think we also have to realize here that if you look at the market, that especially companies, big organizations, they will not go fully Mac. I think the best example you can always see is in the e-commerce section, and especially when it gets to B2B e-commerce. Typically, they have big databases with a lot of products. These products have a lot of dimensions, have a lot of information around them in databases that have been developed over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And they don't want to throw that away. They want to go composable, and they want to, let's say, move into a more flexible architecture. But for them, it's not like throwing these old databases away or these old solutions away. Sometimes they're just very happy with it, or with that old CRM that was developed specifically for them. So for us, and that's what we also try to advocate at Conscia, it's not Mac only. Mac is great. It will definitely help them to create a more, let's say, flexible architecture, but it's not only Mac. And so if you go into an architecture and you go into that composable world, then we should, I think, all try to educate the market what is a good architecture, and that parts of it are very well when you take them from the Mac Alliance, it's perfect. But for me, and that's one of the things that I definitely learned, it's not one or the other. And for a lot of clients, it's still also not so relevant. For them, they just want to have an architecture that is flexible, that is composable. That's where I really believe that everybody wants to go. But for them, it's much less relevant whether it's Mac or not. Although you still see it sometimes in RFPs popping up. Janus, I just move on, eh?
Yes, it's so far so good. I was just joking with the eyes earlier. You're doing well.
Okay. No worries. So then another thing that I also learned in the last 6 months, and that is I called it education. It remembered me a lot from going back to the early days at when we started with our headless CMS. It was a lot about education in the market. Well, and if you want to try to create a new category, or you want to try to create a new product and put it in the market like we did, Conscia is there since 2019, then it means that you have to educate the market a lot. Okay, what does a digital experience orchestration do? Like, what is the business value? How does it help? And what I then realized is, and I talked about it also when we had the event in Florida with the CMS Expert Group, then I still see that we is the whole market. I think everybody's on the call is a bit responsible for sometimes confusing the market. We throw in terms, we throw in new approaches, we try to differentiate ourselves and try to give it a little bit of a nice marketing twist. Looks great, but the downside of that is that in reality, it means that everybody needs to educate or re-educate the market again about the new term or what is actually different between your product and the other, because you're using terms or we are using terms and buzzwords that the market doesn't get. And especially, as I said, when you're in a new category, digital experience orchestration or digital experience composition, it's even harder because it's also a new product category. Like CMS, everybody knows nowadays, I would say. But when you talk about the DXO, it gets a bit more complicated. So a lot of my pitches, work, things that I did in the last couple of months was really around education. And I really would like to ask everybody to help me a bit with that, because I think we can, as I said, make life a little bit simpler. Then, and I promise, I think I only have 2 left, and then we have some time for some small Q&A questions. So the fourth thing that I also noticed and I see, and that has something to do, I believe, with also the situation in the market, is that companies are very hesitant to do these big bang approaches anymore, even if they're in a big monolith and they all realize that they need to go into something new, they need to go into composable architecture, they want to have a new solution, new CMS, whatever they want, then you see it's all about very small steps. And small steps can start with proof of concept. I've never prepared so many proposals around proof of concepts that actually solve a small piece of the puzzle, that actually are used to show some ROI before actually the appetite gets big enough for companies to take the bold move and to go into something new. And this also is a bit related to the step before, where I said it's about education. Well, if you're a CMS and the company has an old content management system and wants to move to a new content management system, it's still a pretty straightforward thing. Although you can question if they go from more legacy CMS to headless CMS, it's also a lot of education and small steps. But you can imagine if you're like a new kid on the block and put an orchestration platform in the middle, it's even more important. Like, okay, what's the value? Like, can we please prove it? And I can tell a lot about it, and I can do a great sales pitch why it's so important to put an orchestration platform in a composable architecture. But still, the clients, you see that they're hesitant to take steps. They want to, let's solve a small business case. So it's really small steps towards the future. I think we have to realize that. I think we're not the only ones that feel that, but I think we have to realize that some products are not so easy to implement in small steps. So I think if you look at the future and also look how I look at how vendors should position themselves, or how they should look at pricing strategy or product approach, I think you always need to make sure that you're able to allow clients to actually take these small steps, so that it's not like the all-in, all or nothing approach. That's something that I see clients don't want anymore, and I think they're right. I think that's this is also a way to move forward. So that's the fourth thing I wanted to say, and then the last thing that for me is something that popped up, I would almost say after the summer holiday, I realized it even more, and that is that I suddenly see everybody using the term orchestration. And I think this is a bit similar to that education part. You could say and even question whether the word orchestration gets a bit democratized. So everybody's using it, everybody's like talking about it. But then the question is like, what is it? What is orchestration really? What are we talking about? Because I can imagine if you're a CMS and you talk about orchestration, then you talk about content orchestration. Yeah, how can you help to orchestrate that whole process of content creation, content management? You could also talk about data orchestration. I think some vendors are calling themselves probably more like data orchestration platforms. Yeah, what is that then? Is that then also content orchestration, or is it actually more orchestration of data across multiple platforms. Then I see like digital experience orchestration. We call it ourselves. So for me, the orchestration term is getting more and more a buzzword in the market, and the only thing I'm a bit careful for is that because everybody's using it and everybody's talking about orchestration, that nobody on the business side actually gets what it's about. So I think what is missing, or we should always attach to the word orchestration, is what it actually means for the clients, and add a bit of the business value here, because otherwise we just introduce another buzzword in the market and nobody gets what it is. So that's why I also put a question mark there, because I'm doubting a little bit whether it's really democratization or whether it's more like everybody's using the buzzword. So let me as a vendor also try to find a way how I can put orchestration buzzword into my offering, and I'm not such a big fan of market confusion. So that's another thing that I saw in the last 6 months popping up, and I'm really curious how that will evolve over time. So that's just a short a shout out of my 6 months. I definitely know from the group that there's some opinions, questions, and I didn't want to do a whole slide deck, but I just wanted to touch on a couple of topics that resonated pretty much with me in the last days. And I would say before I will go to back to and stop sharing, I definitely want to say I will go to Aarhus. I think everybody will should go there. So I hope at least to see you there next week. And if you can't, I know there's something going on in the US as well in the beginning of the year, but I hope to see you in Aarhus, and we can definitely continue a bit of discussion around these topics. But I think we still have 10 minutes left. So I just want to
thank you very much, Bart. That was great. 6 months, beautifully summarized in 6 slides. Well done. We do have time to take questions, comments, reflections. I have a few prepared. We can also go down the Tony Blair reference with education. But I think let's stay more on DXO, DXC. Anybody wants to go first? Please raise your hand or write in the chat. In the meantime, perhaps I can just ask, because you said that you're seeing a change in the summer. People ask for orchestration. Are customers beginning to ask for digital experience composition?
I didn't say that, I believe.
I think you said that customers are beginning to ask for orchestration, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say, yeah, I would say that, and it's the customers and it's the vendors talking about it, but in a lot of I think everybody has a different opinion about what they're actually asking or what they're actually talking about. That's why I try to make a difference also between, like, is it now orchestration of the content itself? Is it orchestration about the process? Is it orchestration between technologies in a composable architecture? So I think that whole orchestration word is becomes such a big like a container term, that I think we have to add some clarity to the market about what it really is, what is the value then. Yes. That's my point a bit more here.
Great. All right, I will get back from myself trying to walk out on the thin ice. Leave it to you, Paula.
Oh, thanks, Janus. I have a question. So in this composable world where Conscia has taken like a very specific problem and tried to solve that, who do you think in a biggish organization would actually ask for a solution to that problem? So the orchestration problem, yeah. Who do you think? Is it marketing? Is it, because I guess it might be different. In your experience, who are the people who are either aware of a problem or can be more easily brought to think about that problem?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Paula, and I think that, like, let's say definitely the IT departments, definitely let's say the CIOs, the CTOs, because they have the task with the push, obviously, to this more composable architecture with more best of breed solutions to make sure that they work seamlessly together. It's obviously driven by business that wants to do something with it. We always like to talk about a bit more use case specific, like what does orchestration, digital experience orchestration actually means. You, at least from our perspective, you connect multiple, let's say, best of breed solutions together that will offer a certain part of the digital experience. And if you orchestrate that, then obviously you can create a couple of use cases like personalization or experimentation or search engine optimization, etc., etc., etc. But business will never ask for orchestration in itself. Business just wants their business problem to be solved. They say, well, hey, I just got this great headless CMS, DAM, CRM, and CDP, and I just want to be sure, I just want to be able to do and deliver some kind of a personalized message. So they're not asking about that orchestration. They ask about the output of that. So I think if we start talking and that education part is much less for the IT people. I think the only thing what I see with the IT departments is that they have a tendency now to develop things themselves. They see they have a front end, they want to have all these backend systems. So what's their answer to the solution? It's not buy a product that can help them, but typical answer is, okay, let's build an integration layer or something like it. But then they again forget the business users, where the business users don't have the power to actually control that experience. And I think that's where I see that there's a lot of education to do. Hope it answered the question a bit.
It does. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bart. Any other comments, reflections? Wojciech?
Hey, hey everyone, and Bart, good to see you. My friend,
good to see you.
I have a very simple question actually. So I'm sure that when you moved from Headless CMS to DXC, DXO, whatever we call it, you had some expectations and you had some opinions on the product and on the industry as such. Is there something that really surprised you compared to the reality when you joined Conscia, and really compared to the way how you looked on Conscia and DXC, DXO when you were Headless CMS or part of the Headless CMS?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things surprised me, one of the realizations that I had a bit more coming out of the CMS world for 8 years is that, especially when we moved into Headless, the Headless world, that realization of that business user, let's say, adoption was much lesser than we expected. That actually you saw a lot of CMS vendors, and I think everybody's still trying to catch up on that. Is build business features into these headless CMSs to try to overcome the challenges that the business actually has. And I think that honestly, probably CMSs were a little bit too late with that. So we should have done that earlier, because like, and then you get a bit to the same question. One of the things that I also thought was that the realization when an organization would go into a composable world with all these elements of the stack, that they needed some way to connect all those worlds together. What I didn't realize was that it was such a, I would say, spaghetti code, old-fashioned way of integrating things again, and that a lot of organizations created like these front ends with a lot of logic in there that get slow, like that every time they want to add a new channel, that there's a lot of development work involved. So I think it's great for developers, but that's also a thing I didn't realize, that going into the composable world, that it would create such a burden, especially in the front ends itself. So I'm really happy that at least that realization starts a bit in the market, that you actually see that it gets more separated. But yeah, that's where you then see that these clients that I saw already in the last couple of months, that actually just created completely technical layer between the front end and the back end, because they at least realized that they didn't want to have a heavy front end, but they just couldn't find the right product that would actually fit their needs. And I think now also in the world, that's one last part I want to say about it, is it's very difficult for vendors, everybody, to stay in their niche, to really stick to what they supposed to do. Because I think in the composable world, it's so easy for a software vendor to add another feature, solve this problem, solve that problem. But I think it's much better to stick in the core of what you are, and not try to then add a lot of things to the stack, because then we will end up in the DXP world that was like 15 years ago. And I see, for me, that's going a bit in the wrong direction.
I think there's this famous quote, those who do not understand history are destined to repeat it.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Or Janus, the saying is, you just get old if you see the cycle too many times. Then you're just getting old. Yeah.
Hey, that's good. But thank you. That was a really good question, Wojtek. Thank you for prompting also, Bart, for reflections. I think we have, when you said great for developers, reminded me of, I think there's another vendor uniform called, I think Against the Glue Monster. I spoke also yesterday about an integrator, which we're thinking about, should I put this product, something like a DXO, DXC in place? Does it give me extra work, or does it actually take work away from me? And what's the long-term best interest? And I think we live in it seems like an interesting time where there's some of these tectonic plates are shifting.
Yeah.
I think that's all we had, unless there's a question here at the end, at the end of this planned time. I would say, like, Bart, keep the conversation going. It's always nice to join in person. That's something else. The conversation for sure will continue. I'll make sure to write this up. Thank you to everybody who took the time to join us. I'll share the slides as well, and the recording, a few of my bullets here. But I think we live